Welcome back to Mediocre Painting with me, Wayne. We're going to be working on another stage of my Phoenix Hawk land air mech for Battletech, aka or Robotech Valkyrie, that's been repurposed for that. You'll notice since last time I actually went ahead and put him on a taller flight stem. The other one that came with it was way too short and he looked like he just got impaled on a fence post. So I actually wanted to get some actual height above the ground on him to show he was flying and not very unfortunately posed with a stick in his crotch. So anyway, we're gonna do the primer now. Use my airbrush. We're gonna be using, shoot, I just broke this guy. Good times. Welcome back after our technical difficulties there. We're going to be using some one-shot white primer. This stuff is very thin, so you're going to notice that it's going to look kind of translucent on the model when we put it on there. That's why we're going to do a couple of coats. Shake this very well, otherwise you're just going to spray binder all over the model and you're not going to have any paint. And now we shake. Okay, should be good. We keep it thin because we don't want it to run. And just layer it up. I like the control of the airbrush, and especially when you got a model that's really small like this and multi-posed. If I'm hitting it with a rattle can primer, I'm never going to get in these up under details very well. And because it has such thin detail lines on it, I don't want to risk filling those in with primer because the rattle can primer comes out much heavier. And I want to be able to panel line this little bastard when I'm done. Because it's really the only detail these things have is the panel lining behind the elbows. Alright, now we're going to wait a minute. Let that dry. Round 2. We'll get his stem. Round 2 is done. Alright, so we're going to do some quick washing to make this white kind of muddied. Kind of make it a grayish color, but we don't want to just put straight Nuln Oil on. So we're going to do some Nuln Oil and mix it with some contrast medium. So I did about 16 drops of the Nuln Oil. So we'll just do 8 drops of medium. These are all guesstimations. You can play as you like. Just thins it out a little bit so that it's not as stark as it normally would be. And it adds the contrast medium tendency to it, which actually thickens it just a hair. And sometimes it takes some experimentation, which is why I have these models here. Make sure I got my shit right before we do final cut. That's what we'll be doing. Hell yeah. And what this will almost do is give this model that comic style look of being kind of cell shaded. And this is how you cheat and panel line a thing that's really small without having to do this with a needle. You can do any color you wanted, you could use this recipe for. The biggest thing you gotta bear in mind with this is trying not to let it pool up too much. You can let it get a little bit of a pool to give it a shade, but you don't want a big pool like that, so you gotta be vigilant and kind of pull the excess away with your brush as you're going. And you've got a little bit of work time with this, but not a lot. So we're gonna go back in and pick out some details and do some edging with some model color white. And I put this in my tray. We'll add just a little bit of water to that to thin it down. I put too much in my tray, but I'm all about excess. So we're just going back in and kind of doing a light Go to white to accent some of the areas we want to accent on this model so it doesn't look like a gray washed out mess. In Battletech, they have different weight classes of mechs, battle mechs. And the lightest being, of course, they call light mechs. Then you have medium, heavy, and then the biggest ones, which are called assault mechs. Now, this is a land-air mech, which was supposed to fill the role. It's a medium mech, so it's 50 tons. And it was supposed to fill the role of an aerospace fighter and like a scout type role with fast attack options. And because of the schizophrenic nature of being a land-air mech in universe and in game, it doesn't actually fulfill any of these roles very well because it's not dedicated fighter, so it's not as good like in air and against other fighters that are strictly that. And it can't take a hit, so it doesn't do well in a toe-to-toe match against other similarly classed mechs. But what it's got going for it is cool factor, which is very important to me. And it does move fast enough to where, like, when it's engaged in this hybrid form in the tabletop game, if you keep moving, it makes it really hard for the other mechs and the other pilots to hit you. So it has the advantage against regular battle mechs in the tabletop game of speed, which I can appreciate. But due to its limited weapons loadout, it doesn't hit very hard itself. But it can scoot around the table really quick and harass the enemy, while your other mechs, if you're playing the game with a traditional lance of 4, this guy gets harassment duty while your other dudes are setting up. And then I'm going to come over here and start doing like the arms and stuff. And the trick with white is keeping it thin, because otherwise it gets chunky on you. If you're wondering why I'm not just doing a dry brush technique, it's because I want a little bit more control over where the paint goes. I want these to be kind of exaggerated highlights, and I don't want it to get streaks in it like dry brushing tends to do. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna paint the gun, the hands and the feet with some black, get them ready for their next step. I'm just gonna use some black primer for this. And I thin this black down to where it's a little bit translucent too. It's like contrast at this point, but not. Pew pew. So we got guns, head lasers underneath, and the feety feet's done and the hands. And we'll be back next time to start doing some more detail work. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you've enjoyed this next segment of painting Battletech Land Air Mech Phoenix Hawk. And we'll see you on the next episode. Look how bougie.
My makeup isn't this nicely organized.
Oh, is it not? I'm
No.
sorry.